Aloha, everyone. Jeremy Vaeni here, and it's still our doing radio. Can you believe that? I am forging on with yet another lesson from the classes or seminar series of one Tom Cheatham. Thank you again, Tom, for allowing me to sit in and talk to your people, bring my message to your people. One of Tom's people was a psychiatrist, I believe. I don't think he was a psychologist. He's a psychiatrist who dabbles in the shamany weekend retreat stuff that I make fun of. I think he runs one or something in South America, but dealing with Iboga, which is, I don't remember which African nation, but from somewhere in Africa. So doing the plant medicine Iboga of Africa in South America, a psychiatrist from another country, from a third country. And ultimately, I think, doing it to see if it has enough sort of psychiatric medicinal value to be able to, I don't know what, distill its elements, distill its essence, and sell it, right? Turn it into a drug, I guess. Or if I'm wrong about that, then turn these type of shamanic retreats into therapeutic, legit therapy, westernized medicine style. But am I wrong in thinking that all the sort of westernized medical stuff involving ayahuasca, now Iboga, and DMT has to do with, ultimately they want to make pills out of this crap? Isn't that what they want to do? And they probably will or want to, even if they don't think they do. They do. But it was interesting because, he runs these things, and Tom Cheatham admits that he runs into the arms of these things because they help you to deal with your own psychological issues. I guess in that sense, maybe they make you a better person. They expand your mind, man, and all of that sort of stuff. But that's not the spiritual. That's not the death of self. That's not nothingness. That's just more thingness. That's more paths. And this is what I sort of came to with this man, and I actually got him to admit that there is no death of self that occurs in a plant medicine or hallucinogenic journey. There is the recontextualization of self, but the self, the so-called witness, the participant, is always there. And that's not something that is widely known or said. At least, I haven't seen it. And when he answered it, you could tell he was answering it begrudgingly, but honestly, so I will give him that. And the other guy who I spoke about previously, who was, wants to inject us into a virtual reality robo-crap future, he's also big on these hallucinogenic trips. And he was also trying his best to make the case that there is a death of self because, part of his shtick is that he can relate to everything I'm saying because he's experienced it all too and he's thought it all before, and he hasn't. And this guy actually got him to admit that much, at least, that there is, again, no death of self. So that's good. I felt like that was a good, place to get to, at least in terms of being honest with ourselves about what's going on with these things and what we're not experiencing with them. Because too often we tend to treat these drug trips as the end all be all, or big spiritual experiences. But again, there is no death of self involved, and therefore, there is no moment of nothingness with these plant medicines. That there's a false nothingness. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos. I don't know if I've talked about this on this show. I don't think I have. Probably talked about it elsewhere. But I've watched a bunch of YouTube videos on people tripping doing various ayahuasca, shrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, I guess, are shrooms. But what's the other one? Salvia, I guess that's the other big one. And sometimes people report going into a void or nothingness in the sense of they are completely alone and there's nothing around them. And now and then people report feeling blissed out about that and liking it, but mostly people have reported being scared by it, like this horrible void. And that's not nothingness. There's still you in a void. And dare I say, in avoidance of you, which is probably the message of that particular trip, which is here you are coming to a jungle or your friend's apartment or whatever it is. You're taking this dare of ingesting something that's going to really alter your mind and change your entire world, really rock you down to your core. And, what it's showing you is the thing that you really need to deal with, which is you're afraid to be alone with you. You would rather go through all that rigmarole than just be with yourself. I mean, have you ever thought about that? Have you ever just thought about the irony of the people that we've even talked about so far, wanting to inject yourself into computer technology, wanting humanity to go on as Martians, whatever, right down to being a YouTube star because you love the way your voice sounds and you like getting the compliments and the likes from other people and all this building you up, you, and wanting to carry you on into the future, you, me, look at me, I'm awesome. And then when push comes to shove, all of that me claiming to be amazing and claiming to love myself and claiming that I am the perfection who must go on into the future when we destroy this place, that was all a defense mechanism. I'm actually just scared to be with myself. I don't really like me much because I know what I am. Deep down, we all know what we are. We're defense mechanisms against the fear of death. The end. And that used to be useful in the way back when we would the defense against literal physical death was finding something to eat, finding a mate to procreate, finding shelter, all the basic necessities. And now that we are coddled and don't need a whole lot of those basic necessities, although we still do, we just claim we don't. We think junk food is food. And we think pollution is our home, and porn is sex, and companionship can be found online, if not in life. We've got all these substitutes and all these replicas that we live by and in and under and consume, right? So even our coddled nature here is a lie, is a delusion. A delusion within a delusion within a delusion. We're like an echo chamber of delusions. It's crazy. Literally. But, and again, all in service to building up this self, being intoxicated by the self, projecting the self into the future, not wanting the self to die, wanting to immortalize ourselves as digits, I guess. And really, we're afraid of us. We don't even want to be with ourselves. We hate ourselves. Imagine that. I mean, only humanity would come up with a thing called narcissism, which is like a, mental disorder where you love yourself so much because deep down you actually loathe yourself, But here we are, and then we put that on a pedestal, and we're like, yeah, let's make that the president. Let's make that the aspirational online occupation of the moment, I digress. Right. So we're talking about the psychiatrist. Maybe I need a psychiatrist. Talking about the psychiatrist who is doing these retreats and the such. And I did get him to admit, again, because I found him, outside of the guy who wants to put us all into computers, I found him to be the second most, it's a coin flip. Most offensive person, second most offensive person. in this class, offensive to my sensibilities of like existing, right? Like because on the one hand, he's trying to claim that there's some spiritual element to all of this, that it is spiritual, and yet at the end of the day, he's a capitalist and trying to sell it, trying to find a way to find the next big thing, iboga, and sell that. The only thing I ever knew about iboga, I'd read about it once, and that there is some sort of often seen but not always tree bark entity or god-like entity within the trip who sits you down and talks about your psychology. So once again, we are confronted with, just like with ayahuasca, you've got the ayahuasca goddess who is a snake who may wrap herself around you and talk to you about your own psychological baggage. Here you've got this tree bark god who does the same exact thing in a different context. That's not always the case. That's just what I had read about it early on, and I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that. But the common thread here is, I mean, ironically, right? Because as these psychiatrists and psychologists are trying to figure out a way to turn it into psychotherapy, it already is psychotherapy. That's the first thing that the quote-unquote spiritual essence here on the other end of the ingestation wants, right? It's the thing that I've been talking about in terms of the so-called alien, right? Like, who wants it? An alien comes down, they want equals, right? It behooves anyone, anywhere who wants to talk to us to get us to see ourselves clearly so that we become the healthy, whole expression of what we are before the next conversation, which again is why I often sound like a broken record, because until we get there, can't talk about anything else, right? So it is with tree bark plant medicine people, I guess. But here's the thing, even in terms of it making you a better person, it doesn't make you a better person. There are plenty of people who do these things, and they're still egomaniacal. I mean, even this retreat sounds like, from how it was described, one of the things that attracts Tom Cheatham to it, and I'm not insulting him here, he spoke about this in the class, is that, I don't know if it's run by or if it just is inclusive of, or is attractive to attractive women. There's like a bevy of attractive women who are all too willing to take care of Tom, of you, of a man, of whoever. I mean, Tom is an older man, right? And so he's got these young, beautiful women who are tending to him as he's doing this, I assume, kind of scary, kind of awe-inspiring thing for the first time in this foreign country. This mind-blowing event. And he's being coddled by beautiful women, which naturally, I'm sure, triggers the high school kid in him who probably didn't get that kind of attention from that caliber of physical beauty, right? Let's just be honest with what this is. And that's baked into the thing. I don't know whether they are working for this outfit or, again, whether they are participants who are, but you see it in the New Age and in the plant medicine thing. There are lots of, beautiful hippie people who are attracted to this. And they're all the free love open people, right? So that's part of the attraction. Does that make you, that doesn't, you're already starting off, in other words, with some sort of like inner child sexualization. So that's not the path to being a better person. That's where you've got to like make the choice to stop and go, oh, wait a minute, what is this? Why am I feeling this way? Why are they attracted to this? Why am I attracted to this? What is this actually about? Because isn't this also how cults work, right? They get the beautiful people to seduce you into joining the cult. And I'm not saying that this is a cult. I'm just saying it all works the same way. It's interesting how, I don't know, these personality types who often are physically attractive seem to be attracted to living in these ways. So it doesn't make you a better person. I mean, obviously, if you can come out of this and think like, I know what I should do. I should take some sort of tribal medicine from one continent, transplant it to another. Both of these continents are continents that have been dominated and destroyed by capitalist colonialists. I should go build a colony there, and then I should find a way to capitalize on the medicine that I am culturally appropriating. Are you a good person, psychiatrist? Does that make you a good person? So no. I have yet to see anyone from the drug culture or from the plant medicine culture who's, great. I mean, there are some decent people, but they're not, any better or worse than anyone else. It's not the same as the I am experience because it's happening to you. It's not that you are that. It's that it's happening to you. And insofar as there is any I amness to it, it's the feeling of it. There is a fluidity to you, but you're still there. You're just recontextualized in as a smaller sense of self to this greater bunch of imaginal Toontown stuff happening in the foreground. I've said that a million times, right? That's not spiritual. That's like being trapped in imagination at large, like in collective imagination, which usually siphons through you through various filters of your own unconscious mind and your own probably genetic makeup. Well, those filters are what are gone. And now you are but a pebble in the stream of human imagination. And it's all happening and you're like, what? So that's not spiritual, but it's different. And it does call attention to, I don't know if you want to call it the illusion that this reality we've set up is, but that reality doesn't need to be set up this way, that you don't need to like go to sleep and dream for 8 hours a day. You could take a drug and be the dream while you're awake. That's just another way that the mind can work. So, like, I often hear when people talk about, like, reality is an illusion, it's all real, the Matrix, they're angry about it. As though we've all been lied to, man, none of this is real, man. But it's like, no, all of it is real. And none of it is real. I mean, it's not real in the sense that this is all one consciousness being. And what is it being? It's being all things. So in that sense, but these all things, just because you can have different states and stages of consciousness or different ways of being, that just means that you've got different limitations and restrictions. So like it's not more freeing to be in a drug trip because it's just got different limitations and restrictions. So your limitation is you're not going to bring back evidence, as the McKennas found, Dennis and Terrence McKenna found out. You're not going to be able to bring out of, for instance, the mushroom trip, any evidence of its tangible reality. You're not going to take Freddy Krueger's hat off of him and go, look, everybody, every time I go to sleep and dream, the evil guy with the claws comes after me. He's real. Here's his hat. Like, that's not going to happen. So there are limitations. The other there are limitations in terms of, like, if you do these drugs on a rooftop, could you not realize the rooftop has an end and then keep walking? I bet you could, and you could walk right off that rooftop by accident because your physical body still exists whether you're conscious of it or not. And there still is a difference between the building you're on and the air around it, and the gravity still exists. So whether you feel as though you're flying, guess what? Gravity still exists. You're not going to fly, dude. So there are just different limitations. So yeah, I mean, it expands your awareness in one sense, but expanded awareness is not wholeness. Wholeness doesn't have a center, doesn't have a circumference. Wholeness is wholeness. So yeah, the drug trip can take your little self, and can move you out to a periphery that is beyond the personal. Um, but that entire circumference, larger though it may be, is not wholeness. There's still a you that has to move there and has to move back. There's still time and distance and all of that. And also, let's not ignore that microdosing these things for like depression isn't necessarily healthy. It's just another means to ignore our depression. Like, we keep doing these psychoactive drugs to quell us in some way, and it doesn't actually do that. It just, they have side effects. One of those side effects may be, you got to keep doing this for the rest of your life. And oh, by the way, if you get off it at some point, they may find out at some point, like they have with anti-anxiety drugs, that it actually changes your brain chemistry. And you could screw yourself up by going off the drugs. I mean, is that going to happen with these things? Yeah, let's go with yeah, probably. I don't know that it has. I'm not a doctor. I have no evidence of this. I just have evidence of every other drug ever. Everything that's around us and how we always use it. Instead of dealing with ourselves. I mean, it's just interesting that we want to like distill down to its essence some therapeutic value, again, of a situation that is inherently therapeutic, and especially the one where you're like in the void. That is your opportunity to work on your depression, to work on your, wow, why is it that I had so much fear? What was that fear about? Was it the fear of being alone? Was it the fear of not continuing on? What was the fear? Why, instead of just being like, wow, that was scary, man. That was a bad trip. Anyway, let's take this, let's dumb this thing down as much as possible and put it into a pill so that people can fight depression without having to actually confront depression. So I find all of these to be fallacies of plant medicine. It's not selflessness. It doesn't bring you to selflessness. It's not transporting you to something more real. It's not bringing you to physical places in the universe or alien beings or any of that stuff. Even Dennis McKenna has said as much in interviews. And I guess, I think with ayahuasca, it's been shown to be good for, I think, if I'm not mistaken, people with post-traumatic stress disorder. So to the extent that it's good for things like that, fine. But let's deal with, why are we giving each other post-traumatic stress? What's this stress about? I mean, unless it's like from natural catastrophes or things that are of natural, but even those you have to deal with. But like usually when I think of PTSD, I think of veterans going to war, or child sexual abuse victims, things of that nature. Why are we just doing the topical Band-Aid solution? And why are we taking these plant medicines that, by the way, I don't think shaman were using for these purposes, and then reappropriating them for these purposes? Like, I don't think a shaman, I don't know, I'm not one, I haven't really spoken to one, but I gather from what I've what I've seen and what I've heard, that shaman and medicine people, and by whatever name in whatever culture, kahunas, they're not really doing self-help. And that, in fact, their sense of self is usually different than ours. It's usually more inclusive. It's usually less autonomous. It's usually more about family and or environment, like the family including the flora, the fauna, other nations, other nations including the stars, including the ants, including, go down the list. Everything. Everything is a nation. Because everything is not a thing. It's all energy, and that energy is, coalescing as organisms, living beings, and we are among them, and, So they're probably not as concerned with, like, how do you feel about your childhood as we are. I'm just saying, it like the whole idea of co-opting this stuff is kind of gross to me. and not what it's for. And instead of asking them what it's for and sticking with that, we want to bastardize it, and we want to steal from it, and we want to make money off of it. And we want to take it out of their hands. We want to take it out of their culture. We want to take it out of the forest. We want to take it out of the desert. We want to put it in the big cities. We want to put it into the hands of soccer moms and dads. And, eventually their kids will start snorting it. Their kids will get into that ayahuasca jar and start snorting it or injecting it between their toes or whatever it is. And then that'll give mom and dad something else to feel depressed about. Then they'll have to take that iboga drug and to, counteract how they feel because they know that they did this to their kids and they feel shame, but they don't want to feel shame. So they take the other drug and they start to feel a little better. And then maybe that shame they've compartmentalized, they throw it into their politics and they go, no, it was the libs. Like it's somebody else who had that, or it was, or if you're liberal, you're like, no, it's because of the CIA importing drugs, or the white trash doing the drugs, or let's just blame China. Somehow it all goes back to China. Like this is the sick psychological world we live in. This is what we do. Let's just be real. And let's be real that, spending thousands of dollars to take a trip into probably the safest jungle settings South America has to offer for white people and filling it up with beautiful women so that when you take your drug and you throw it up, you've got someone sexy there hovering over you, patting you on the back to make sure you get it all out. That's none of that has to do with spirituality or being a better person. It just has to do with sex and drugs, and if they can tune the binaural beats just right, the old boomer trifecta rock and roll. Spirituality? Self-help? Get out of here. You're crazy.